welcome to the Faculty Lounge, a place for discussing strategies that foster student success. Settle in, get comfy, and let's learn together. Welcome. We're here at the Faculty Lounge podcast again. My name's Eric Taylor. I'm your host. I'm here with my colleague Stacy Rice, and we're here with Matt Mckay. He's going to talk to us a little bit about what he's done in his classroom, and so I'll just turn it over to Matt.
Well, I'm a geologist over in the Geography, Geology, and Planning department, and around the time of the shutdown, the COVID shutdown, we were all struggling how to teach what we do. Sure. And geology is really tricky because it was already difficult to teach how to look at rocks in a classroom. Right? We can't just take people out into the field magically. And when COVID happened, we couldn't do anything. We couldn't take them out. We couldn't even be in the classroom. And what we do is inherently spatial. We think about rocks around us, rocks beneath our feet, Earth systems, the atmosphere. It's all interconnected and it's all three-dimensional. And we even think over time, that's 4 dimensions. And then we think compositions and water, and that's 4th, 5th, 6th, all these dimensions. And how do you do that? First of all, we started reassessing in our classroom. In our classroom, maybe we were limited to what we could do. Right. And that's why we take all these field trips, is because we want to take a student and immerse them in a system. Doesn't matter what it is, really. And that's one of the secrets. They think we're teaching them about igneous rocks or metamorphic rocks or sedimentary systems. It doesn't really matter. We're teaching them to think in 3D.
Right.
That's three-dimensional science. That's cool. What we do. And then we can reprogram pretty fast to do groundwater or oil and gas or whatever. It doesn't matter. We're three-dimensional scientific problem solvers. That's what geologists do.
So you can apply that to really any data set. It's you're coming up with how to learn.
Ideally, that's the idea. Yeah. And a lot of our students, we have a lot of students go into environmental science, and they protect our groundwater and surface water. They may only have 1 or 2 classes doing that specifically, but they've learned to think in 3 dimensions and 4 dimensions, cool. and that's the skill set. And well, with COVID, how do you do that on Zoom?
Right.
That's even more tricky. Right. I mean, probably impossible to do well over Zoom alone.
Yeah. Tricky, yeah.
And so, and with no lead time, we were just frantically trying to put things together. And eventually, after things started kind of becoming more normal, we stumbled at a friend of mine actually go, hey, you should check one of these out. And we started looking at it and trying to find some of the potential to use the headsets.
Nice.
Okay.
And the first thing we came into there is there's no real content. There's not a lot of teaching content. Right. And part of, what the Meta and Facebook folks will, well, you can teach with these things.
Sure.
But what do we put on them?
Right.
There's nothing there.
Yeah.
Right. There's no content.
And for our listeners, the headsets you're talking about are?
Well, right now we have Oculus headsets, and we have 24 of them. Then we've used them in a variety of classes.
Very nice.
But theoretically, any headset will do, any VR headset. In fact, there's the Google Cardboard where you can put your phone in.
I've seen those,
Those would work just as well.
Cool.
It doesn't really matter. We just got these because they're low cost and they're easy to get a hold of. Sure. We can get a large number of them for classes.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. So it sounds like COVID was a big inspiration for you guys to kind of move this more to an online format. But was there any other source of you wanting to do this?
Well, we use more than just the VR headsets. The VR headset was the first thing that came to us because we had somebody pop up and say, you should figure out how to use this.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we should get these VR headsets in our classes. And then we started thinking about the 3-dimensional. How do we deploy 3-dimensional resources? And so we started using, and some of our faculty had already started using 3-dimensional models that we can use on our phones or just a regular PC works really fine, but it works really well on your phone. Sure. You can scroll, spin things around, zoom in, zoom out.
Sure.
And we can't normally do those things in a classroom. Right. And so it really gave us the motivation and the incentive to start testing these things out. Because if you remember, at the time, we were all worried, what if we have to do this again?
Sure.
Everybody was terrified.
We're all still a little traumatized.
We don't want to do that again.
Yeah, right.
At least we have an idea.
And at least we're mainly, more of us are prepared now.
Yeah.
And we at least know what's out there.
Yeah.
That was another thing I think that was shocking is when now that happened, I think we all thought there was more technology than there was.
Yeah.
And maybe we were sold the technology was more user-friendly and deployable than it turned out to be. And we found out the steep learning gradient to even use some of the technology. And some of the technology we were sold existed was there.
Yeah,
Not
for sure.
market ready.
Yeah.
And it looked cool on a advertisement, but it was not usable for normal humans.
Right.
So some of these technologies, everybody has a smartphone at this point. We can assume. We do run into some problems with smartphones because different varieties of smartphones don't work as well as others, right?
Sure.
Androids sometimes don't do things that the Apple phones do, and back and forth. But that's been our big push, is how much interactivity can we create? Because if you were to say, here's an unlimited budget, go teach people about rocks, we'd be getting on a plane, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Get on a plane.
Massive field trip.
Let's get in a giant RV,
Right?
and we're just going to take
hit the
off.
road. Yeah.
And that'd be great. And that would cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And take a lot of time.
Yeah.
Right.
And so now what we've decided is, well, let's just try to best we can bring these experiences into the classroom. So our department purchased a virtual reality camera.
Oh, cool.
And so it's about maybe the size of a volleyball.
Oh, wow.
It's a bunch of cameras on it, and it collects pictures in 3 dimensions and panoramic.
Nice.
So we can take those pictures, put them on the headsets, look around, and be at a location.
Very cool.
We can actually do videos as well. The problem is we have to put the videos on YouTube, and YouTube means you got to be on the Wi-Fi, and it gets complicated when you have 24 headsets trying to stream off the Wi-Fi.
That's true.
So we've been stuck with static images, not because we can't make videos. We absolutely can. It's just so slow.
sure.
You got to have that backbone to support it.
It's baby steps because we don't know what we're doing. I'm not a video editor. I'm not a professional photographer.
Right.
I'm just a guy hiking in the woods with a camera.
Right.
and taking geologically interesting pictures.
And I do have a video background, and I joke with people a lot that that's where you're really going to know how kind of old your computer is when you start editing video, because it's super intensive. It takes a lot of power.
I will give a lot of credit to our IT guy who went and stood in line at Best Buy to acquire a new graphics card.
Oh, wow.
Because if you also remember, we ran out of technology at some point.
Oh, yeah.
And you couldn't get graphics cards or microchips or anything.
Right.
And so Brian went and somehow acquired some graphics cards so that we could do some of this video editing.
Wow.
And we thought we had good graphics cards.
Yeah.
And then
You'll know.
I opened some software and
it's a hog.
watched the little wheel of doom.
That's right. Beach
So
ball of death for us Apple users.
That's part of the learning. It is. We were on PC, but doesn't matter.
No,
It's still,
no.
Still
It's
spins.
hard on everything.
You can see smoke coming out the back. But that's kind of been the learn is figure out what to do it, and then figure out what we don't have.
Right.
How do we get there?
Right.
And the Wi-Fi is a good example. We've had to start looking at new ways because we want to get the videos.
Yeah.
We just can't deploy the videos right now because it's so data intensive.
Yeah.
And we can't store all the videos on there because the videos are huge.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a 360 8K resolution
Oh,
panoramic
massive.
video.
Oh,
That
it's
means
massive.
it's basically 2 videos stacked on top of
my
each other.
Yeah.
And
So yeah, I can see where they're.
it's huge. Yeah. You put 2, maybe 3 on there.
Yeah.
Of a couple minutes long.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's why we need to be able to host them on YouTube.
Yep.
But now then we're streaming off the Wi-Fi. It just gets complicated. And we didn't know this. I mean, again, we're just the rock people. We go look at rocks.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't.
Well, I think we take things like Wi-Fi a little bit for granted, thinking
For sure.
that because it works everywhere else. But then when you're getting 24 and more people hitting those Wi-Fi signals, then you realize, oh wait, this isn't just like an unlimited.
Wi-Fi certainly has its limitations too. I have 2 gig fiber internet at my house, but we'll never top maybe 800-900 megs down on a Wi-Fi connection because the tech just isn't there.
Yeah.
We pay for the service, and the service comes to my house at that speed, but my own network can't support it. So it's always a drawback.
And I think it's interesting you were talking about when you first got started and how like the technology's there to do it, but then it's not like there were pre-built
Oh, and yeah.
resources for you to use the technology with.
That's one of the big disconnects that and this is not just on this kind of front. It's all across the board.
Yeah.
There's technology, and there's people that know how to use the technology.
Right.
And they don't know why to use it. They don't know they know what it can do technically,
Right.
but they don't know where it can solve a problem.
Right.
And so they're sitting there on this little technology island, and they're there.
Yeah.
You just have to learn how to communicate with them and find them.
Right.
And go, I have a problem, and here's how your technology is going to solve my problem. And then they're going to go explain it more.
Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of the miscommunication happens. Is the tools are there. You just have to go communicate with people that don't communicate in your technical specialty at all.
Right.
I mean, at all.
Yep.
And so you have to almost sell them as to why they should care about your thing.
Right.
And so, I mean, this is a good example with if we had professional VR editors that were interested in this stuff, there's a huge market for these virtual reality field geology.
Yeah.
And those popped up. Every school tried to make one over COVID.
Yeah.
And then when COVID was gone, most of those schools forgot about it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because
really?
it's just over.
It's just too much.
But it's still out there. I mean, this is incredibly useful for, ideally, in my brain, we have these on standby, and when an instructor wants to take people to the Himalaya, go get a headset.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go to the Himalaya.
Yep.
And somebody's going to have to go to the Himalaya and take a picture.
Right.
And that's incredibly time and resource intensive.
For sure.
That's part of it. You know, I went up Mount St. Helens with the camera to get the Mount St. Helens imagery, and we used that. And we drove through Yellowstone and got some nice, pretty
Awesome
views of Yellowstone where we can put the headset on and tell students, look over to the left, look over to the right, and you can see the little caldera rim and
That's
different
awesome.
things.
Yellowstone's amazing.
It is. It's fantastic.
Went as a child, and it was incredible.
And the students don't have to deal with the crowds.
Yeah.
You know, headset.
Yeah.
You
Or
don't
driving
have to.
across
That's
Wyoming.
right. That's a long way.
The airlines and however else you get there.
So if you were going to talk to another instructor who was interested in maybe implementing some of these ideas, what advice do you have for them? What could you tell them to maybe ease their transition into this new mode of teaching?
I think one of the things that we initially started with is, let's just take our current things that we talk about and go straight into the VR. We'll just take whatever we normally do and go to virtual reality or 3D models or whatever. And that didn't work as well.
Right.
Because we were used to teaching with 2D items or even regional. We would bring up a regional idea because they would know about it. Well, now that we have the VR, it's a whole nother ballgame of thinking. Sure. And so even something as simple as something looks cool in a picture, it's not maybe as cool in the VR.
Yeah.
And so we've started to learn about if you're going to go to VR, understand why you're going to go to it and what's the best way to maximize the use of the technology. And so one of the things that works for us when we're talking about large geologic landscapes is trying to find places where you have something distal, something close by, generally something above you, something down below as well, things at different ranges, and so that the student can engage that spatial thinking. And they're moving their head. We want to move in their head. Because once it's spinning entirely, it doesn't really matter. But once they start doing that, they are immersed into whatever we've put in front of them. We don't just want them looking at one thing. We want them looking behind them. We want them looking up, looking down, as much as possible. And so that's changed what we've kind of tried to get in some of these images, and they're just still pictures, but they can still look and feel the depth and also the scale.
And you're providing context for all this. It's more than just a picture, you know? That's awesome. Great.
Another thing I think is amazing about this from an accessibility aspect, if you have students who are interested in your courses that, maybe they have mobility issues.
That's a huge thing in geology, is because every year we have students that do have mobility issues, and a lot of them are supposed to go to field camps. And so we can't really provide some of those experiences like we'd like to. And so this technology would give us a whole new route to more or less imitate what we do in the field best we can. During the COVID time, when we were able to go out to field camp, we were still able to travel at some point, but we were still worried about somebody getting sick. And how do you deal with that? We got to isolate them. And so part of we didn't have anybody get sick, thankfully, but we did take this with us. So the idea was we could send out one of the teaching assistants or one of the instructors, take images and take them back to the student that was isolated so they could stay with the course and not fall maybe more than a day or two behind. Because that would have been very tricky. You have a student that's missing for a week and a half. What do you do? Because you may have moved at that point to a different location, and now the grading scheme's all messed up. They missed a whole component. And so that was our solution, is take the camera, take the headsets, load the headset.
That's awesome.
Put it outside their door, knock, run.
Let
them get the headset. And then they can go stop by stop, and we can have provided locations, and they can, I mean, it's not as good as going there and seeing
Right.
something, but it's pretty close.
But it's also way better than just
not doing
not
it.
doing
Sure,
it.
Exactly.
absolutely.
Or
It's
only getting
big
like
step.
this one-dimensional picture.
Big
Exactly.
step up.
Because I mean, you're moving your body in the experience, and
That's part of what we have this kind of vision to go to, is to using game engines to imitate that as well. And I think the same applies, is nothing will imitate physically being there.
Right.
And even when we go in the field and take students, there's a lot of walking between stops, but they're thinking and they're engaged with what's around them as they're walking. And you may lose some of that with a video game.
Sure.
But you could probably do a whole lot more, a whole lot faster.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
you're not tired.
Right. Yeah.
You're just running.
That's true.
And there have been some video games that were created for some of the geologic field camp exercises.
Oh, I don't doubt it. That's awesome.
There's two.
Cool.
Maybe
Two.
three.
Cool.
One of them is moderately well put together, but it's just one exercise. And so that's been part of it, is how do we bridge this technology to get some of those more accessibility friendly exercises,
Right.
so that everybody gets a chance to go see some of these features and think in 3 dimensions and see all the things.
That's awesome.
Because when our students get hired, they're not going to be standing on a nice pretty mountain where they can see all the rocks.
Right.
They're going to get shoved into a field and have to figure out where the rocks are beneath their feet
Right.
in the flat field of nothing. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's part of the game, is we start them in something where they can see everything, and then we take it away.
Make it a little harder.
They can't see anything.
Oh, wow.
But they're using those same principles and same
Yeah.
3-dimensional thinking to solve a problem into the ground.
So have you noticed this impacting your students' learning? Have your students, do you feel like they understand your material better or differently than they did before?
We're trying to figure out how to quantify that.
Yeah,
Because
that's always
that's what
the
we
tough-
do.
yeah.
How do we need a number to
Yeah.
say?
Right.
Measurable outcomes.
They are more engaged with it.
Yeah.
And so I think we'd all agree
And
more
that's
engaged means they're probably soaking
Yes.
up more of it.
Yes.
But I can't quantify that.
I think that's terrific, because a lot of people imagine, first off, that going online automatically decreases engagement. You
And
know, and if you're saying you're actually seeing more by incorporating the virtual reality, I think that's a great sign of, where things are headed educationally.
Because part of that is you could just require a
Yeah, have 'em
Google
get-
Cardboard or
Yeah.
a Oculus or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And they could be sitting in front of their computer. There could be an online component.
Right.
And I think in geology, we've always been worried about that because we have so many hands-on things.
Sure.
Maybe we can imitate some of that. Maybe even do it just as good. I don't know.
Right.
We don't really know what we're doing.
Right.
Is important, but that's okay.
There's something to be said for the controlled environment too, because when you the expert are out in the field putting these examples together, thinking, because I think about this with even chemistry, when they talk about doing virtual labs, there is this hesitation, and then it's like, but you can control, like you can let them see what you actually want them to see happen, because they may all get out there and you've got 15 people, and that's 15 opportunities for something to not go right.
That's true.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm a field geologist by training.
Yeah.
I go out in the field all the time.
Yeah.
And when you're out in the field, I think there's two things. One, we start pointing at things and doing all this, and 15 students, I'm not entirely sure they're always looking at the exact thing I'm pointing at.
Right.
And so, if we can capture this, we can put an overlay.
No doubt.
We can
Yeah.
have it flash up, and then they see it, and they go, well, that is
That's
okay. I see
Okay.
that. That's
Yeah.
the red thing.
Right.
And then the red goes away, and then, I can't unsee it now.
Yeah.
Right.
I know what that is.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we can do, talking about the controlled environment, is we can show them one thing, and then we can show them the different version of it, or the opposite.
Right.
Or we can show them, let's say we're on a barrier island along the coast, and they're standing there and they're looking around and they're seeing the barrier island. We can, within a quarter of a second, take them to what that would look like in the rock record 30 million years from now.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because we just go to what that is 30 billion years ago,
Right.
right? And it's now a rock. And we can switch and show them these things really fast so they can see the differences.
Oh, wow.
Instead of, let's get in the van and drive 8 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And they're going to forget, and they're
Yep.
going to go to sleep,
Right.
which is what I would do too.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
And it's hard to do those comparing and contrasting when it's days apart or months, years apart. You
Yeah.
can see one
Oh, yeah.
year and
Sure.
something else the next year, and I remember seeing that, and it just
Yeah.
all gets lost in the blur.
Yes.
Again, the problem is we just don't have all the content, and it
Right.
takes so long to get the content. You talked about video editing. There's days that go away.
Absolutely.
They just disappear.
Sure.
When you're sitting there watching the same thing over and over again.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, you have a 3-minute video or 10 pictures or something. People look
For
at it and
all
go,
that work.
"Oh, that's cool."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is cool.
Yeah, I think nowadays more people realize what goes into video editing. just because of COVID and all that and what happened. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of work if you're going to do it right.
Yeah, and I have no training, so I watch a lot of YouTube.
Hey, YouTube is great.
YouTube is fantastic.
Yep.
I've learned a lot off YouTube.
Yep.
Especially on things like using Adobe Suite and things to edit. Premiere is what we use a lot of, which can handle our VR things.
Yeah.
But it takes a long time just to get, when you're editing in VR, you're not just editing one thing, you're editing 2 videos stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
So you got to make sure you put some text up top, you have to put the other text directly below it in the bottom screen so that it pops up. And do you want it to look 3-dimensional or not?
Right.
And then you got to wait hours to see your exported result.
Right.
And then you got to go back and remember what you did that morning to fix it.
Yep.
It's just this long iterative process of time that goes away. And so that's, time, and because we have to make all the content.
Sure.
That's just at this point, I don't think it's ever going to just magically appear.
Right.
And so that's where we are, is making content and hoping that it holds up for long enough until we can make more content. But we're trying. We've got, I'm going, I guess you guys have supported us 2 years in a row to go do that, to go collect content. So
so you got a curriculum innovation grant?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And so this year's I'm going to be going to Iceland and Scotland to collect like key, textbook kind of stuff.
Wow.
I'm also going to Wyoming. Same. We're going to go to one of these spots in Wyoming that
all over the
pops
place.
up in textbooks. We got to. That's where the stuff is.
Yeah.
And so we go, and we've been collecting videos, and I can't deploy them. I can put them on YouTube and send them to my friends.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can't deploy them to the classes very well. But we have them for whenever we can deploy them.
Yeah.
But other than that, we've been using static images where students can look around and see the different stuff. But Iceland, there's a lot of good places. There's a little village that in the 70s fought off volcanic eruption with seawater, and they were able to divert the lava flows around their village. Sounds like it wouldn't work. I'll be the first to admit, that sounds like a terrible plan. It totally
seems like
worked.
something out of a movie.
It absolutely worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called Heimei. It actually worked.
Really?
Yeah. They fought the volcano and they won.
Wow.
And so I'm going to go out there with a friend of mine, and she's an expert on the area, and she's going to talk about all the different features.
You can't take students to a volcano.
Right.
I think that's frowned upon, right?
This one's fine, I'm sure.
I mean, I guess it's not an active.
The village is still there.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's still an active village.
Didn't
There's
you
an
hear
Airbnb over there.
They won. They beat the volcano.
Yeah, they
I
won.
know, but I'm just thinking.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It made me think about, oh wow.
But the
active
cost.
volcano,
Think about the cost to take
cost
students.
Is prohibitive, but then
Thousands of dollars. But me, by myself,
yeah,
for sure.
that's
a
not too
whole
bad at
other-
all. Yeah. That's much cheaper than.
Right.
And there's and we can instantly go from those places, right? We can go, here's a volcano in Iceland. Let's go show you Mount St. Helens now. Different volcano. And we can talk about the differences just within a same class.
Yeah.
Sitting over in our classrooms.
And that's where the ease of comparison and contrasting comes in, because they're going right from one to the other.
Another example is there's some Mars imagery. You want to take it to the extreme.
Wow.
Very nice.
There's Mars imagery, and it's incredible.
I bet it is.
I can get that on one of these. I'll pull this up and show you. One student once was just sitting in the front of the classroom, not moving, and I had to go check on him. I was like, "You all right?" And he said, "I don't ever want to take this off." He's just lost because he was sitting at one of the rovers, just looking around.
Wow.
Oh, that's
But
amazing. Though.
it's incredible stuff that can be done.
Yeah.
I mean, Mars is completely unattainable to go
right.
do that.
I don't think we figured out how to travel. I mean, I know Matt Damon's been there, but the rest of us, it was hard getting him home.
Yeah.
You know.
And I keep asking him to come talk to my
Right.
class. And
No response
he
yet.
says he's really busy.
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't understand it either. But
Pretty sure his mom is a teacher, and he's really passionate about teaching, so I'm shocked to hear
Yeah.
that. But we'll have to get at him.
No letter writing campaign.
we might be able to get Brad Pitt to give him a call.
Yeah,
There you go.
Get him to come down here.
For sure.
But yeah, there's other things we're using too. 3D printed
That's amazing.
terrains. Those are really nice because it's hands-on.
Do you guys have a 3D printer in your department?
We have several, yeah.
Wow.
And I keep thinking
Wow.
this trip back to the moon that they're going to take. I'm assuming that somebody could
Soon.
get some.
That's supposed
really
to be
pretty
next
darn-
2 years.
I mean, the technology just in alone has changed, obviously, since we've been there, but how that can get incorporated.
There's not as good of imagery on the moon as there is Mars. Because if you look at all the more recent rovers,
Yeah.
they've all been going to Mars.
To Mars, not the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Mars imagery is really good.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That makes sense, yeah.
This is amazing.
But
So how did doing all this impact your teaching practice?
Well, that's a good question. I have started queuing up, almost integrating my lab components a little more instead of just having a lecture and then a lab.
Okay.
And so for like 100 level classes where there's multiple sections and then multiple lab sections, that can't be done as easy.
Right.
But I teach upper level courses where I'm in control of both.
Right.
And so the lines between those get a little blurred sometimes because unquestionably at some point I am no longer lecturing. We are now
Right.
doing a lab exercise.
Yeah.
And I have migrated over because it just works better that way.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so that doesn't necessarily fit into our normal view of things.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of this is we have how we used to do stuff.
Yeah.
And then once you get everything in play, you might have to rethink how some of these things are organized.
We're more flexible now.
Yeah.
You're following what feels right rather than the rigid structure of take this lecture, attend this lab. So that's wonderful.
I remember when I was an undergrad, I had a physics class that did that, and the guy it was listed like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was listed as a joint integrated thing. And once he just got done rambling about whatever he was rambling about, we had the springs out and the little
nice.
cars and the ramps and stuff because he could just go right into it.
Yeah.
And we've never been able to necessarily do that as easily in geology because we can't shrink stuff down
Right.
like a physics lab
And
can.
I would think that would even engage your lecture portion, if you will, because I remember when I took separate lab and lecture courses, the labs were very engaging. They were smaller groups, they were more interesting, they were more hands-on. Lectures, not so much. So I think if you could increase one, it might rub off on the other.
that's what I would want to, if I was a student watching, I would
Yeah.
want to hear a little bit of talking.
Yeah.
And then I would want to do something.
Because
Yes.
you do need that background information. And I think students know that they need some level of introduction, but then they want to do the things. you
Doesn't
know?
matter what it is.
Yeah.
Do
You're learning
something.
and
Just
applying
want
at
to
the
do-
same time
yeah.
rather than learning on a Monday and then applying it on a Thursday.
Exactly.
And there's plethora of research out there that we're going to learn more when we do the things as opposed to just sitting and listening. And I think, I don't know why it comes to mind, the carousel slideshow, just clicking through the pictures and somebody just talking at you, and then you don't engage them because, well, there's nothing really to engage. But man, being able to just pull this together where you are getting to have those really good conversations because you've introduced it and then you're moving right into this hands-on piece.
So I've also kind of moved away entirely from PowerPoints.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
Yes, that's great.
I had shrunk them to begin with, but after all we could do was that in COVID, I was like,
Yeah.
I'm done with these. I don't
Yeah.
think anybody wants to see these ever again. Well, at
No.
least I don't. And so I
your students
just
don't.
write on the board.
They don't.
Well, if you put those up there, click. It's hard to highlight too what's important.
Yeah.
But when you're writing, like big letters,
Sure.
the big letters are important. It's just little subtle things like that. Or if I spend an hour drawing something, and some of the time is me physically drawing,
Yeah.
they're going to draw it.
Yeah.
Right.
And if it's just a picture,
Right.
that's gone in 5 minutes.
Right.
Even me rambling for as
Right.
long as I could about one picture is 10 minutes.
Yep.
I couldn't go more than 10 minutes.
Yep.
But I can make one drawing over the course of a whole lecture, which
Yeah.
I've done before.
Right.
And it ended up being this just ridiculous kind of,
Right.
mural that I made with labels everywhere, but they're frantically trying to keep up
Oh,
to
yeah.
put up.
So
I've
they're
even
not
had
really
them
hearing you.
Well, they are.
They're drawing.
They're trying to
with
get
you.
everything on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen them actually yell at me like, stop, like about to erase, And they get really animated when you erase too soon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's the only time I've seen them truly get really irritated.
irritated
Oh, yeah.
with
Do
you.
not erase that. And so, but they're doing something, right? They see if I am taking the time to write it up there, it can't just be
Right.
slides. Even, the information's all on the slides too, right?
Yeah,
But
right.
I think if they see me writing it, like, it must be important enough for McKay to write it up there. So
Right.
I
Yep.
better
Sometimes
do something.
Do
Yep.
the drawing.
Or sometimes I'll just even give it away. Like, this drawing, you're going to have to do it on the test. And then that's on my test. You put that on there. That means that information is somewhere
Yep.
in your brain, and I'm fine with that.
There you
Right.
go.
Right.
I don't care how it's in your brain. I'm giving it away.
Yeah.
Right.
You're going to need to know this.
Yep. Yep. I think a lot of people have to, once you write it yourself or you draw it yourself, that commits it to your memory.
Yeah.
A lot for me. I would gain a lot more from that than just like reviewing a picture.
It goes right
essentially
back
like
to
a
the
flashcard.
doing. It's the physical activity along with the listening. So it's multiple channels.
Yeah.
And we know that when you engage multiple channels, so when we're listening and then actively drawing with you or something like that, then you actually do commit it more to memory.
Yeah.
And secretly, I wonder, learning it, staring at it for hours, that's one thing. But then when they have to regurgitate it onto a piece of paper and label everything, I'm wondering if they're really, this is my ideal, I hope this is true. I don't know if it is. I hope they're learning during the test when they're having to do that under the, under the pressure.
Yeah.
Like, if possible, wouldn't it be great if tests were a learning tool, not an assessment tool only?
Right.
Does that make sense?
No,
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yes.
Like, I don't actually, I understand
the choir.
you know what I mean? Like, I know we have to do assessment, so that part's important.
We do have to measure that they're learning something.
That's true. But it's not as important to me as using the test to make them learn something.
Right.
Yeah, measuring
Does
an
that make sense?
outcome
No,
doesn't
totally.
mean giving your students a test.
Correct.
It does not.
That's
mean
also true.
yes.
It could be a lot of different things.
But can I do them at the same time?
Yeah.
Or
Why
can
not?
I? Yeah. And they're used to tests too. As much as we have test anxiety, they also understand the tests
There's
as
an
well.
expectation of it.
There
too.
is. There's expectation, and I think they're used to it a little bit.
Yeah.
And so when they're talking about graded materials, they're a little bit, not just them, all of us, me, know what to expect from a test, but can we work our tests to let them learn during the tests?
Yeah.
And I don't know how to do that. I try.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I guess probably failing, but I'm
Going
trying.
back to like metacognitive strategies, one of the biggest as far as a tip that we give students on learning content is to teach the content you're trying to learn. It doesn't have to be to another individual. I'm talking line up your stuffed animals. Get your dog. My dog is now an expert in adult learning theory because I have to be an expert in it. And so I know I look crazy, but this is why we do it when we're alone. But to teach, even if it's an inanimate object, because you have to learn it at a different level to be able to teach it to somebody than to just regurgitate it.
Yeah.
And so getting them to do that, especially on a test environment.
I don't know if any grad students will hear this, but that's why at least my
Well, you
feel.
can require them to listen to
I don't want them to know this. I think that's how they learn the material, their specialty, a lot better. That's because we make them be TAs.
Yeah.
And they're the TA, and they have to go in there and realize, I don't know if I really understand this.
Right.
Like I thought I did. I got an A in the class, but
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what I'm talking about.
But now I have to teach it to someone else.
Exactly.
So you have to know it differently than just.
For sure.
Correct.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's a big difference, and it's noticeable. Yeah.
Oh,
So what resources did you use for this, or what resources could you recommend for somebody that's wanting to start using VR?
I think you just got to get a headset first.
Right.
And then, and there are several places that they can be acquired
And you mentioned
on campus.
like Google Cardboard.
Google
is like a
Cardboard.
free printout.
I think it's like $15.
Okay, like
it's pretty
so
cheap.
very affordable, and you can go all the way up to the high
Couple
tech.
$100, and
Yeah.
I mean they go even higher than
Sure.
that. And at least get an idea of what you want to import, because some stuff, I'm sure there are other specialties that have content.
Sure.
And geology has some pretty pictures, but not really content heavy, and it's more geared towards aesthetically interesting, pretty pictures, pretty views, which are great. It's just maybe not at the scale or close enough or in a location where you can get a lot of learning out of some of those things. And a lot of those are, proprietary, high-end, National Geographic kind of things, and we can't use them as easily.
Sure.
Because I can't give you notes and have you watch a video and you use the notes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weird things like that we've had to learn about. Like, how do we have them have a handout? Paper handout, because everybody still likes a paper handout and drawing. That's the easiest way still for us to do that and turn it in. How do you draw and wear the headset at the same time? Or how do you interact with a physical object in the head? So there's all these things that we don't have good answers to.
Tablet connectivity.
Well, same with the tablet. If you got the headset on, you can't see the tablet. And we started using smartphones a lot during COVID as well. And that we relied on Blackboard the Blackboard app.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was interesting.
Yeah, I got
Because
that.
it didn't always work all that well.
I've heard a lot of things about the Blackboard app and not a lot of good stuff.
It did have a little trouble. Went down for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it would work fine, sometimes it wouldn't. Sometimes a good example is if someone had a newer iPhone, it would take the HEIC format
Instead
pictures.
of a JPEG?
Yeah, correct. And it would upload these HEIC pictures. So if I was grading on anything, even a Mac, it would not display the picture.
Yeah.
So I would have to go grade it on an iPhone.
Yeah.
Oh my
Or
goodness.
open it in Photoshop and convert it over.
I think
nobody
you
wants
can
to do
open
that.
it in preview too if you're on a Mac.
Really? Okay.
I think so, but I wouldn't know about a PC. But yeah, I've
But bless
encountered
you
that.
for going and
snafu.
getting your phone to grade their
As
stuff.
I'm
instead
scrolling
of-
down through, that's what I originally thought. I was like, oh, they used an iPhone. And so I pulled the Mac open and tried it. Safari, nothing.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, okay. So I ended up having to open it on my
Oh, wow.
phone and scroll, or my tablet or something. But, that's
Yeah.
seems like that's an issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's where we've been kind of balanced. That's where we're back to paper.
Yeah.
Because we know the paper works.
Yep.
Yeah.
Again, we've also had problems we build a lot of stuff. Generally, it seems to work better on some of the Apple stuff. They seem to be a little more consistent. We've had problems with some of the Android stuff because it's not as consistent across the board on
Right.
the Android side. So some of the Android stuff works, some of it won't.
Yep.
Some of our little 3D models, they just pop up, it's just a blank screen.
Yep.
And how many phones do I need to
Right.
test this on?
Right.
And so we just don't have the resources for me to sit there and test
Wow.
labs out, for hours.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with the content limitations is
Yeah.
we make it and we can't really test all these in-member
Right.
options, especially when it's on the phones.
Yeah.
That gets kind of tricky.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I guess you just, if somebody was going to try, I'd have to say, be prepared to fail and be okay with it. And find an avenue where you can fail and maybe the students would never know.
Right.
Like the 100 level labs, the intro level things.
Yeah.
If something goes awry in there with the technology, that's fine.
Right.
We
Yeah.
can get around that. We can pull
Right.
rocks out of drawers all
Yeah.
day long and we're fine. And if only 3 of the 5 headsets work, that's not a big deal. We
Right.
can make that fly.
Right.
And so let's fail in an environment where it's, I'm going to say low risk.
Yeah.
Right.
No
Safe.
one's going to know
Yeah.
Right.
or
right,
care.
Right.
Even the upper level classes, the kids, they're not going to get angry.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the headsets isn't working.
Right.
They're going to be cool with the other one working and
Right.
not know any different.
Right.
So you just have to be okay with
Yeah.
messing up over and over again and troubleshooting.
Yeah.
I feel really glad that I don't teach computer science courses.
Yeah.
Because mine's not working is a common thing I'm sure they hear.
Hey
And
man,
you just
turn
have
it
to be
off and turn it on again.
That's right.
And that fixes most issues.
That is correct.
Yeah.
It's no different than when your router at home
Yeah.
isn't working.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just unplug it.
Unplug it.
Turn
Wait
it
10
off.
seconds. Plug it back in. Yep.
Let all the electricity flow out of
think
it
we-
for
Yeah,
those
right.
10 seconds.
I think we've stopped beating our electronics for
Yeah.
working because I remember that used to be a route to go.
Yep. Yep.
We tried slapping it on the side.
Yep.
The old Nintendo cartridges.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Blowing on
You
it.
blow in the cartridge. Yeah.
Which, thinking about that, blowing like moist like breath into
Was
an electronics
probably not
cartridge
a good
can't be
thing.
good for anything. But
But it works.
It sometimes worked, yeah.
And believe it or not, I actually just recently gave my old original NES to my neighbor because it had sat in our shed for who knows how long, and it still works perfectly.
Oh, that's crazy.
So there's something to be said about that, I guess.
There is, yeah.
Simple, the 8-bit days.
Wow. That's crazy.
Well, Matt, it's been a great conversation today. We've really enjoyed having you on the show. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with? Any final thoughts? We've really covered...
We've talked
all
about
the
a lot of
bases
stuff
today, so
yeah.
we've talked about a lot. I want to thank you for coming in. Again, I want to thank my colleague, Stacy Rice, and I want to thank Jacob Lackey, our recording assistant, for being with us today. And thanks again to all our listeners for joining us on the Faculty Lounge. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being part of the Faculty Lounge. Join us next time, and let's learn together.